I'm currently in Kuje Central. Kuje Central is one of the wards in Kuje Area Council of the Federal Capital Territory. Right now, I'm at the Central Primary School here, LEA Primary School, Kayarda. And in this primary school, it houses about 4 polling units, 4 polling stations. And as you can see behind me, election officials are already on ground. They had deployed materials earlier, and they have been setting up. You can see behind me, we have the ballot boxes for chairmanship, for councillorship. You can still see the officials setting up. All materials have been deployed, both sensitive and non-sensitive materials. Over there also, we have another polling unit that is still being currently set up. And also behind me here, there's also another polling unit that is still currently being set up. And as you can see over there, you can see some voters have already started coming in, although voting is yet to commence, but they have started coming in to check for their names due to the voters' registers that have been placed on the walls in the primary school here. So by and large, we have party agents, election observers on ground. And also, one key thing to note is that we have a number of security operatives on ground. I mean, I can see men of civil defense, I can see men of customs, immigration, can also see police officers, amongst other security agencies that are here. I mean, it's fully packed. Like I said earlier, it's about 4 polling stations here. So it is expected that soon enough voting will commence, especially as voters begin to troop in to check for their names, and also, to check for their names on the register, and also voting will start.
Aisha, when we spoke to Sumayya earlier, well, not necessarily a bit of a concern, but we were looking at the voter turnout. Can you give us a bit of a background on what the voter turnout looks like at your station? I know it's probably too early to tell, but based on the atmosphere and the mood around you, what does the voter turnout look like it would be today?
Well, Inam, like you have said, it's still a bit too early to tell what the voter turnout may be today. But for what we can see today, we can see already some persons, some voters within this particular ward, the Kuje Central ward, have started trooping in. I mean, I can see women in their numbers, I can see men in their numbers coming in. It's still a little bit too early to know how the turnout will be later. But from by and large, and from what I can see, I wouldn't say people are not interested in voting at the moment, because we can see they are coming in gradually. It's still too early to know the number of persons that will be coming in later. But I've seen so many voters are checking their names to be sure that they are in the right polling unit and they are in the right place to cast their vote shortly.
Now, I don't know if you've been able to engage with some of those that are waiting to vote, but how important is this Abuja Council election for restoring public trust in INEC and the electoral process?
Well, I would say, even prior to the election, when we covered the area councils, especially as I have been covering Kuje area council, I can tell you that this election is very important for the residents of Kuje area council here, and also it's also going to restore confidence in the people and in INEC. Why do I say this? Because we have spoken to residents even prior to now, and they have, had some reservations, although in other wards in Kuje Area Council, not particularly in Kuje Central, because the people in Kuje Central, they attest to the fact that the chairman, who's leaving now, had actually put in some infrastructures in place which they didn't get to see before now. They actually commended him, especially for people in Kuje Central. But for people who are not in Kuje Central ward, I mean, Kuje has about 10 wards, 10 political wards. This is just one ward where is the seat of power in Kuje Area Council. But for people in other wards in Kuje Area Council, they have said it over time that they didn't see much of government presence, especially in the area of road infrastructure, provision of power, provision of electricity, schools. I mean, you saw the reports we did earlier on where we saw dilapidated schools, healthcare facilities, amongst other infrastructure that are begging and calling for government's attention. But in Kuje Central, I would say the situation is different. The roads here are good. The hospitals, the clinics here are good. There's water, provision of water and power and all that. But however, the chairman is now outgoing. There are new candidates coming in. New candidates coming in. So it is hoped that perhaps the new candidate coming in would do better than the chairman that is leaving. However, I'd say they are a bit enthusiastic about the elections today, even in spite of the curfew that was declared yesterday and even up until today. There's restricted movement within Kuje, but it's not stopping people from coming into the polling units to, identify themselves where they intend to vote and eventually cast their ballots.
Right. Aisha, I'm actually very happy that you mentioned road infrastructure and all of that, because my next question was going to be, what do AMAC voters care about the most in terms of road, sanitation and safety, and how are candidates addressing this?
Well, this is Kuje Area Council, and like I said earlier, for Kuje Central, I would say most of the residents here, especially from our interactions prior to the election and even today, it's commendable for what the chairman had done in the last 8 years, because they've had just one chairman in the last 6 to 8 years. For now that a new chairman is coming in, it is expected that he continues with the work that the former chairman had done. However, for other wards, like I mentioned earlier, about 10 wards in Kuje Area Council, for other wards within the area council, that is where the issues are, because those wards are more in the they are not really in the city, in the center of Kuje, like Kuje Central here. They are farther from Kuje Central, and there's usually issues with road, especially as people who live in those communities. They're agrarian communities, and people who live in those communities have to, bring their farm produce from the villages to the city center for sale. So there's always a challenge of them transporting their goods from those communities to bring them into the center here. But by and large, the issue is that if the residents are expecting that now that they have to go back and cast and elect new candidates, new leadership, is expected that their demands, demands of infrastructure development, demands of road construction, provision of water, provision of power, provision of healthcare facilities, education, infrastructure, amongst other concerns, amongst other social amenities, would be provided for them as the new leadership sets to come in.
Thank you so much, Aisha. We move now to Sumayya Abubakar. Sumayya, are you still with us?
Yes, I am still here with you.
Yeah. Sumayya, I think you would have heard a bit of our conversation with Aisha.
Yeah, let me jump in here and ask. Sumayya, we just spoke to Aisha, and I think most of what we can talk about currently as we're expecting voters to turn out is voter apathy. Let's take a look at 2022, the last elections. The amount of people that turned out was registered somewhere under 30% of the amount of collected votes. First of all, let's confirm what council you are at currently, please.
Yeah, currently we are at LEA Nare, Kuje Central. Now, this is, of course, a primary school, and over here we have almost 10 polling units different. If you can see by my left-hand side, of course, there is a polling unit right here, and then by my right side we have over 2 polling units, and then around the school. So currently, yes, these are the numbers that we have in this location. And I have to point out about surveillance. I know it's not part of it, but then earlier, apart from the security men that are deployed here, we saw numbers of security vehicles driving in, trooping in, and assumingly for surveillance, and they stopped and then monitor a bit of what's going on, and then they drove out. So we're thinking and hoping that this is something that would continue in the course of the day.
So Sumayya, now Karu is under AMAC, if I'm not mistaken. So I wanted to compare. We're going to have the graphics pulled out now so we can take a look at exactly how many voters collected their cards and how many we are expecting. We want to compare that to what we had in 2022 when it was less than 27% of voters that actually turned out. So we're taking a look at the score, let's not call it a scoreboard here, but Municipal Area Council, to which Karu is also a part. The breakdown here says 841,587 registered, if I'm not mistaken. Collected, that would be 795,081. That's a 94% collection rate. I'm wondering how much of these people we are expecting to see compared to last elections in 2022, where we had only about 27% of voters who actually turned out. What do you expect currently?
I mean, expectation comes with hope. I would say, as you know, we're hoping that we would see a large number. But I have to point out that the fact that right now it's about 8:44 and we are still yet to see voters in any of these polling units available in front of us here. It's something that makes one skeptical because as at last election, the 2022, there were voters already waiting at the polling unit before even the electoral officers, the presiding officers get to bring their materials to that polling unit. But then currently, I'd have to just walk a bit to this example, this polling unit. You can see the officers are already set, but then there is no voter here. Now we have a bit of spectators here who, of course, I was trying to ask them why they're here, and they said they are just spectators coming in. So obviously they're not here to vote. But apart from that, there's nothing, nobody here. So we have, of course, a assistant presiding officer here that will be talking to us, Aliyu Mohammed. Good morning, Aliyu.
Good morning.
All right. So explain to us the plans that you people have so far, and what are your expectations?
Yeah, our expectations are high, and we, by God's grace, everything will go smoothly. Well, as you can see, the security agents are here, the observers are here, and we've got the training which we are required. So, by God's grace, everything will go smoothly.
So, do you know the numbers of voters that you're expecting to come vote?
Yeah, in our polling unit here, we've got 400 plus voters who are registered here at our polling unit.
So what's particular time? What's the right time for voters to start trooping in to vote?
Anytime from now, but the poll yet is not open, but anytime from now, I think from 9, okay, it will be open.
All right. Thank you very much, Aliyu. I appreciate it. So, of course, Aliyu is on this polling unit 021, and he will be presiding. So, according to him, of course, voters are yet to come. Polling unit is not open. But then there's so much expectation. About 400 just on this polling unit. So, if we're going by, say, that estimation in about the 10 polling unit that we have here, we're expecting, about 400 times that number, and it would be large. But then the expectations based on what we have seen, speaking to AMAC residents so far, is a bit thin and lean, but we are hopeful that, of course, this thing will change. So beside here, of course, we have the names placed just by this side, names of, these voters that are registered on every polling unit.